It is not even dawn yet and you are already walking. Your shoulders are on fire. There is a wooden pole digging into the meat of your back, and hanging off it is everything you own in the world: a cooking pot, 3 days of hard bread, a shovel, stakes for the wall you'll have to build tonight, and armor that weighs about as much as a small child. Your feet inside those open leather boots are wet and blistered, and it is only hour 2. Ahead of you the road runs dead straight to a gray horizon. Behind you it runs dead straight the other way. And somewhere up at the front a centurion with a stick is telling everyone cheerfully that the pace is about to pick up. You signed up for glory, eagles in the sun, a shining line of shields, Rome. And I am here to tell you gently that you would not last a week, not one. So let's find out exactly how you'd break and how fast. My name's Marcus, and I have a confession to make before we start. I do this to myself on purpose. For years I stood in front of a classroom trying to make teenagers care about the Romans, and it mostly did not take. So now, most weekends, you'll find me in a field somewhere in the mud, in about 20 kilos of reproduction armor, cooking bad porridge over a fire that won't light, sleeping on the ground, and generally living the way a Roman soldier lived. Because reading about it teaches you one thing, and actually carrying the kit for a day teaches you something the book never will, which is that these men were harder than we can really imagine, and that you and I, with our mattresses and our painkillers and our little glowing rectangles, are soft in a way that would have made a legionary laugh out loud. Don't take it personally. I'm soft too. That's rather the point. So come on. Let me sign you up. First, let's kill the fantasy because you're carrying one whether you know it or not. You've seen the films. The legionary in the films is a hero. He marches for a bit, he trains in a nice montage, and then there's a battle, and either he wins and there's a feast, or he dies gloriously in slow motion. The battle is the whole story. Here's the thing the films never tell you. The battle was the rare part. The battle honestly might be the safest few hours of your entire year. What was going to hurt you, what was going to grind you down and very probably kill you was everything in between. The walking, the digging, the food, the cold, the filth, and a set of tiny living things you couldn't even see. Because the Roman army was not really a gang of sword fighters. It was the most successful machine for organized human suffering the ancient world ever built, and I mean that as a compliment. It was a construction company that occasionally fought. It was a walking city that dug itself a fortress every single night. And to be a working part of that machine, you would need a body and a mind that you simply do not have. Not yet. Let's fix that. Or let's fail too. It starts with the oath. Before any of the walking or the bleeding, you swear. The Romans called it the sacramentum, a sacred, binding military oath, and it was not a formality. You were swearing to follow the commander, to not desert, to not run, to place the order of the army above your own life, on pain of the gods and on pain of some very worldly punishments we'll get to. This was for years, not a tour, not a season. Under the emperors, the standard term of service stretched to around 25 years, and I want to be honest with you because accuracy matters to me. That number moved around across Roman history. Back in the Republic, it might have been closer to 16 or 20, and the terms kept being changed and extended, usually to the great annoyance of the men. But settle on the imperial figure for a moment. 25 years. You are, what, in your 20s now? Do the sum. If you survive, and that is a very large if you walk away in your late 40s, an old man by the standards of the day with a body like a used tool. That's the deal you just swore to. Congratulations. Welcome to the Legion. But before anyone lets you near a real battle, they have to train you, and Roman training was, in itself, a thing designed to break the weak out of the herd early. There's a line often attached to the Roman army that I think about all the time. Their drills were bloodless battles, and their battles were bloody drills. In other words, they trained so hard that the actual fighting felt familiar. How hard? Again, our detailed picture comes largely from Vegetius, that later writer looking back at the army's best days, so treat the specifics as the ideal rather than a fixed rulebook. But the picture he gives is relentless. Recruits practiced sword strokes for hours against a wooden post planted in the ground, a stake as tall as a man, learning to thrust rather than slash, because a thrust of a couple of inches kills, while a wild swing mostly wastes your strength and opens your own body up. And here's the detail I love. They trained with weapons and shields made deliberately double the weight of the real thing. Heavier wicker shield, heavier wooden sword, so that when you finally picked up your actual kit, it felt light in your hands. They were quite literally engineering your muscles for war. On top of that, marching drills in step again and again until a formation could turn and wheel without thinking. Weapons drills, physical conditioning, running, jumping, carrying, even swimming. And it did not stop when you became a veteran. The training never really ended, because a skill you don't practice is a skill you lose, and a legion that got soft in peacetime got slaughtered in war. Now be honest with yourself. When did you last swing a heavy tool at a post for 3 hours because someone with a stick told you to, and then do it again tomorrow, and the day after, for years, with no music in your ears and no way to make it stop? That conditioning, that patient, brutal, daily shaping of a body and a will, is the foundation under everything else I'm about to describe. You don't have it, and there's no shortcut to getting it. So, now pick up your pack. Ah, yes, the pack. Let's talk about the pack, because this is where your modern body starts filing its first complaint. There's a nickname the Roman soldiers had for themselves, and it's my favorite thing in all of this. They called themselves Marius mules, Muli Mariani. The story goes that the general Gaius Marius, around 100 years before Christ, made the men carry their own gear instead of dragging along a great slow baggage train of carts and pack animals that could be raided or bogged down. So each soldier bundled his kit onto a forked carrying pole and hauled it himself. And the joke was that the men had become the mules. Now, I'll be straight with you because I promised I would. Modern historians argue about how much of this was really Marius and how much was already happening anyway. The Marian reforms get treated like one big tidy moment, and real history is rarely that tidy. But the nickname stuck for a reason, and the reason is this. The Roman soldier was, first and foremost, a load-bearing animal. So what are you carrying? Your body armor, mail or segmented plate, tens of pounds of it. Your shield, the scutum, big and curved and heavy, often carried slung. Your helmet. Your sword, your dagger, 2 javelins. And then the pole with the rest of your life on it. A cloak, a cooking pot and mess tin, a hand mill or your ration of grain, a water skin, a saw, a basket, an axe, a leather working tool. And this is the one that gets me, a couple of wooden stakes and a shovel-like tool for digging. All in, the best estimates put your load somewhere around 30 kilograms. Call it 60, 70 pounds. On your back, in the heat, for hours. And here is the part I need you to really feel. That load was not the exception. It was Tuesday, because then you march. And the Roman march was a discipline all its own, not just moving from A to B. Our main source for the details, a writer called Vegetius, describes a standard day's march. The iter eustum, as something like 20 Roman miles in 5 hours. That's roughly 30 kilometers, close to 20 of our miles, in an afternoon at a steady pace, under all that weight. And there was a faster stepped-up pace on top of that when needed. Now a caveat because I keep my promises. Vegetius was writing centuries after the golden age of the legions, looking back and trying to bottle a lost excellence. So historians treat his numbers as an ideal, a target, not a stopwatch reading from every single day. But even if the real average was less on a bad, muddy road, sit with the shape of it. 30 kilos, 30 kilometers, regularly, on foot, on roads you often had to help build. I have done a fraction of this. A few miles in the kit on a nice English afternoon with a car waiting at the end and a sandwich in it. And I was cooked. My mate Phil, I do this with a mate called Phil, you'll hear about him again. Phil once locked his knees on a hot day in full armor and went down like a felled tree, right there in the field in front of about 40 tourists. Passed clean out. And that was a gentle Saturday with an ice cream van 200 yards away. Multiply that by a war. And I haven't even told you about your feet yet. Oh, your poor feet. You are not wearing boots as you'd think of boots. You're wearing Caligie, heavy, open leather military sandals cut in strips, laced up the ankle with a thick sole studded underneath with iron hobnails like little studs for grip and for wear. And they were, by the standards of the ancient world, brilliant footwear. Ventilated, tough, repairable. The hobnails meant the sole lasted and gripped the road. But they are open, which means every stone, every puddle, every stretch of mud and grit and who knows what on a road walked by thousands of men and animals is right there against your skin. March 30 kilometers in wet leather and your feet will blister, and then the blisters will burst, and then the wet and the dirt will get into them. And now you have open sores on the one part of your body you cannot possibly rest. And you march again tomorrow, and the day after. There's a reason armies across all of history have been destroyed not by the enemy but by their own feet. A soldier who cannot walk is not a soldier. He's cargo. So, let's total up your first day. You woke before dawn. You carried 30 kilos for 30 kilometers on shredded feet. And you might be thinking, all right, brutal, but now surely you get to lie down. You do not. Because now you have to build a fort. This is the detail that, when I first really understood it, made me put the book down and just stare at the wall for a minute. The Romans, on campaign, did not simply stop for the night and roll out their blankets. Every single night in hostile country, the entire army built a fortified camp, from scratch, and then tore it down in the morning and did it again the next night. We know this from an eyewitness sort of source, the historian Polybius, who described the Roman camp in detail because the Greeks he was writing for could hardly believe it. You'd arrive, exhausted, and then thousands of men would fan out and dig a ditch around the whole camp, pile the earth into a rampart, and plant a palisade of those stakes you'd been carrying all day on top of it. Straight lines. Same layout every time, same streets, same gates, your tent in the same spot relative to everyone else's, so that even a tired man in the dark in a strange country could find his way, and so the whole thing could be thrown up at speed by muscle memory. Think about what that means. After the worst walk of your life, you pick up a shovel and you dig, not because there's an enemy in sight, just in case, every single night. The Roman army feared surprise more than it feared work, and so it turned an entire nation of soldiers into an entire nation of nightly laborers. Your hands, which are soft, don't argue, I've seen your hands. Your hands would be a ruin of blisters within days. And that, my friend, is day one. You're already dead. All right, not literally, not yet. But something in you, the part that thought this would be an adventure, that part died on day one, somewhere between the shovel and the cold ground. Because now you lie down on that ground in a wool cloak and you have to do the whole thing again tomorrow. And the day after. For let me remind you, up to 25 years. And let me stay on that ground for a moment, because sleep is another thing you've quietly taken for granted your whole life. You share a leather tent with a little group of men, your contubernium, your tent group. 7 or 8 of you who cook together, eat together, dig together, and pile into the same tent. There's no mattress. There's the ground, a cloak that doubles as your blanket, and the warmth of the men next to you. When it rains, and this is the empire that fought in Britain and on the Rhine and along the Danube, remember, when it rains, the wet comes up through the ground and down through the seams, and there is simply nowhere dry to be. When it's cold, you are cold all night, and then you get up and march. I have slept out in the kit once or twice to see what it's like. One night. In summer. In a field I could have walked out of at any moment. And I lay there listening to every small sound, aching, damp with dew, counting the hours until it was light. And I remember thinking with real clarity that I would pay almost any amount of money to be in my own bed. These men did it through winter, in enemy country, half expecting to be woken by an attack, for years on end. The cold alone would have you writing home begging to come back if you could write, and if home weren't a very long, very dangerous walk away. Let's talk about dinner, because you've earned it, and because it's going to disappoint you profoundly. Here is a myth I'd love to kill for you. The idea that Roman soldiers were marching around gnawing on great joints of roast meat. They ate meat, yes, when they could get it, but it was a supplement, a bonus, not the foundation. The foundation of the Roman soldier's diet, the thing that actually kept the empire on its feet, was grain. Wheat, mostly. You were issued raw grain as your ration. And here's the part people forget, you had to process it yourself. You and your tent mates ground it by hand with a small stone mill into flour, and then you made it into bread or into a thick porridge, a pulse, day after day after day. For the road there was hardtack. The Romans had a twice-baked hard biscuit, sometimes called bucellatum, dry and dense and nearly indestructible, the ancient ancestor of every miserable ship's biscuit and army ration since. It didn't spoil, which is exactly why it was horrible. It was built to outlast you. And to drink. Not wine, not the good stuff. You drank posca. Posca was sour wine or wine vinegar cut with water, basically the dregs, the stuff that had turned, watered down into a tart, vinegary drink that was cheap, safe-ish, and mildly refreshing in the heat. The soldiers swore by it. My wife, B., who is a saint and puts up with a great deal, once let me make a batch of posca in our kitchen for a reenactment, as authentically as I could manage. She took one sip, to be supportive. The face she made I will remember on my deathbed. She has not forgiven me, and I don't entirely blame her. That's your drink. For 25 years. Now here's the twist, and it's the kind of thing that makes me love these people even as I wince. That boring diet. The grain, the porridge, the sour drink, the discipline of feeding thousands of men the same reliable calories every day. That was a superpower. Armies fall apart when they can't eat. The Romans turned logistics, bread and vinegar and organization into a weapon. It just happened to be a weapon that tasted like nothing and looked like sadness in a bowl. You, raised on flavor on demand, on salt and sugar and 1,000 cuisines a phone tap away, you would find the sheer monotony of it a special kind of torture. Not the hunger, the sameness. But let's say you're tough. Let's say you grit your teeth through the marching and the digging and the grim little meals. I've been teasing you about all of it, but here's where I stop teasing for a second, because here is the thing that was actually most likely to kill you. And it wasn't a sword. It was the camp itself. Gather tens of thousands of men into one place. Have them drink from the same water sources, near where the same men and animals relieve themselves. Have them living close together, sharing everything, in an age with no idea that disease spreads through filth and water and tiny living things they couldn't see. Now hold that crowd in one spot for weeks during a siege, with the waste piling up and the water going bad. What you have built is not just an army. You've built a perfect engine for disease. Dysentery, typhoid, fevers that would sweep through the tents and empty them. Across almost all of history, right up until modern medicine, this is the quiet truth of warfare that the paintings never show. More soldiers died of disease in camp than ever died on the battlefield. The Romans, to their credit, were better at this than most. They cared about clean water. They built drains and latrines and chose their sites with some thought, and it genuinely helped. But better than most in the ancient world is still a world without the germ theory of disease, without antibiotics, without a clue. So the thing that gets you probably isn't a barbarian. It's a stomach bug in the dark in a crowded camp that turns into something worse over about a week, and there is no one, anywhere in the world, who knows how to save you. You, who take a pill for a headache and book a doctor for a cough. You would be, medically speaking, completely alone. And suppose, at this low point, cold and sick and homesick and footsore, you think what any sane modern person would think, which is, I would very much like to leave now. You cannot. Remember the oath, and remember that the Roman army enforced that oath with a ferocity that is genuinely hard to talk about. Roman discipline was not strict the way a strict teacher is strict. It was strict the way a cliff edge is strict. Fall asleep on guard duty, desert your post, steal from your comrades. For the serious offenses, the punishment could be the fustuarium. The condemned man was beaten to death by the very comrades he had let down. Your own tent mates. That was the system working as designed. It bound every man's survival to every other man's reliability. And then there is the one everyone has heard of. Decimation. When an entire unit was judged guilty of cowardice, of breaking, of running as a group, the punishment could fall on the whole unit at once. The men were divided into groups of 10, they drew lots, and the one who drew the short lot was killed by the other 9. 1 in 10. Chosen at random, beaten to death by his own friends, who had done nothing wrong except stand next to him. Now, accuracy, always, I want to be careful here, because decimation gets talked about as if it happened every other week, and it did not. It was rare. It was extreme. It horrified Romans themselves. It was a punishment remembered precisely because it was so shocking and so unusual. The most famous case is the General Crassus, using it against soldiers who'd fled during the war with Spartacus, around 70 years before Christ. It was the nuclear option, pulled out to terrify an army back into shape. But think about what it tells you about the world you now live in. The point of decimation was not really the 10 men. It was the message to the thousands watching. There is no line you can hide behind. Your life belongs to the discipline of the whole. Run, and the man beside you might die for it or you for him. You who can quit a job with 2 weeks' notice and a slightly awkward email. How do you think you'd hold that line? And now, finally, after all of that, the marching, the digging, the porridge, the fevers, the fear of your own officers, now we come to the thing you actually signed up for. The battle, the eagles, the glory. Let's go to the front line. Picture the shield wall. You're shoulder to shoulder with the men of your unit, big shields locked together. And when the missiles come, arrows, slingshot, javelins, you might form the testudo, the tortoise, the front rank holding shields forward, and the men behind lifting theirs overhead, overlapping. So the whole formation crawls forward under a roof of wood and iron like one armored animal. It's one of the most famous images we have of the legions, and it was a real, drilled, clever thing, protection through absolute coordination, thousands of men moving as one. It is also, from the inside, a nightmare, because to make it work you cannot flinch, you cannot run, you cannot make space. Your survival depends entirely on the man beside you holding, and his depends on you, and the moment anyone breaks, the wall opens and the killing pours in through the gap. This is the part the films get most wrong of all. Ancient battle was not elegant fencing. It was shoving, and terror, and noise you cannot imagine, and the smell of it, and holding your ground in a crush while men to your left and right are hurt, and being expected, trained, drilled, oath-bound, to not take one single step backward. The Roman genius was never really the individual sword fighter. It was that these men, through relentless discipline, would hold the line when every animal instinct in the body is screaming at them to turn and run. And you, be honest with yourself. You flinch when someone throws a ball at you unexpectedly. I'm not mocking you, I flinch too, that's my whole point. But I need you to understand that everything in the legionary's brutal life, all the marching and digging and monotony and fear, all of it existed to build a man who would not flinch here, in the one place where flinching killed everyone. So let's add it all up. Let's be honest about where you break and how fast. The march breaks your body in the first few days, the feet, the shoulders, the sheer load. The digging breaks your hands and your spirit in the first week. The discovery that exhaustion is not rewarded with rest but with more work every night forever. The food breaks your morale slowly, the grinding sameness of it. The camp, the water, the invisible little killers come for your body over weeks. And the discipline, the oath, the utter impossibility of just leaving, that breaks the last thing, which is the modern idea buried deep in you, that your life is your own to spend as you please. You would not last a week. I've said it from the start and I'll stand by it. Not because you're weak, because you're modern. You've been shaped, your whole life, by comfort, by choice, by the miracle of being able to make almost all discomfort stop. And the legionary was shaped, his whole life, by the exact opposite, by the absolute certainty that no one was coming to make it stop, and that the only way through was to endure it together in step for years. And here's where I turn it around on you, because I didn't drag you through all that misery just to make you grateful for your mattress, though you should be. When I put the kit on, when I've done my sad little fraction of the march and I'm sitting by a fire I finally got lit, cold and aching, I always end up thinking the same thing. It isn't those poor men. It's something more uncomfortable than that. It's, what have we traded away? Because that legionary had something we've half lost. He had a body that was genuinely capable, that could carry and build and endure. He had comrades whose lives were braided into his, so tightly that to fail them was literally unthinkable. He had a place in something larger than himself, something he'd sworn an oath to, that gave his suffering a shape and a meaning. Everything about his life was hard, and almost nothing about it was lonely. And you've got the mattress and the painkillers and the 1,000 cuisines and the freedom to quit anything the moment it hurts. And I would not trade you back, not for a second. I like antibiotics far too much. But I don't think the trade was free. I think we got soft in the body, and I think we got soft in the harder-to-name places too. We can make almost any discomfort stop now, And so we've mostly forgotten the strange, unpopular truth that this Roman knew in his aching bones, that there are things you only get on the far side of enduring something hard with other people that you can never, ever buy. That's what gets me every time out there in the mud. Not how much tougher they were, how much less alone. So that's my question for you, and I genuinely read the comments, so tell me. When was the last time you endured something genuinely hard, not scrolled past it, not opted out of it, but actually pushed through it on your feet with other people counting on you? What was it, and would you do it again? I want to know. Put it down below. I'm going to keep toughening up my nephew Cody, who thinks a slow Wi-Fi connection is a hardship, one reenactment at a time. And if this made you look at your very comfortable life a little differently, if you want me to drop you into another era where you also, let's be honest, would not last, then subscribe and come back, because next time I've got somewhere even worse to take you. My name's Marcus. Mind your feet and be nice to your mattress tonight. You've no idea how good you've got it.